did I give the writers of Strange New Worlds too much credit? I mean, yeah, it does kind of look that way. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about Spock and La'an following the 4th episode of season 3, and I'll be the first to admit, I did not see the ending coming. I was really shocked, and I really had to have a big think about it because I was like, did they really do that, or is this gonna be a trick? And I say it's still possible that this is kind of a trick because I still stand by all of the reasons I gave earlier about why I think a Spock and La'an relationship just is not the right move for this show. Now, as I've said before in a previous review, I think the actors have incredible chemistry, and it's kind of sad and disappointing that we didn't get to see that chemistry early on, maybe in season 1 and season 2. I think a Spock-La'an relationship on its own, outside of Nurse Chapel, maybe instead of Nurse Chapel, could have been an interesting direction for the characters. But putting it in the episode now feels at the expense of what they did with La'an and Kirk, which I think was an even more dynamic storyline considering the relationship between Kirk and Khan that develops in TOS and then later in The Wrath of Khan. And to me, it's just a little bit too much to have both a version of Kirk and a version of Spock fall in love with a descendant of Khan. That's just a little bit weird. And as much as I do love delving into Spock's emotional side and exploring the possibilities that could have happened before he became the very logical and stoic first officer of the Enterprise, as I've said before, Spock's love life is taking up way too much real estate in Strange New Worlds. Which is not to say that in TOS and in the movies he doesn't have a love life. I mean, if you look back, Spock does have some significant episodes where we see him in a relationship with someone, or he is confronted with a past romance. And those episodes worked for me. The reason why it's not really working now with having T'Pring, and then having Chapel, and then having La'an is the fact that the streaming format only gives us these 10 episodes a season, and it just feels like we're being hit with Spock's dating life one episode after the next. And honestly, I was kind of hit with Spock and La'an in the same way I was hit with Chakotay and 7 of 9. I mean, it just kind of came out of nowhere, and knowing what's going to happen with Spock, we know it's gonna just leave as well, right? And that is, of course, the question in my mind. The first question is, 1, is this a real relationship? Is this actually Spock and La'an? Or has something happened that we missed in an earlier episode where one of them has been replaced or something has happened? And secondly, what is going to happen with the character of La'an? Because we know, based on the original series, that La'an is not a character that the others are aware of. They're not even really familiar with Khan necessarily. He's a background figure in their history until he's not. And so for me, there's this dilemma of, are we as writers of this new show going to retcon a lot of what happens in the original series, which is possible. They have already begun that process of retconning things, even things that are related to Khan. So it wouldn't be a surprise to me if they decided to retcon the entire Khan situation. Retcon? That's actually kind of funny. Or are they going to do something in the storyline that basically removes La'an from the character's memories and experiences altogether so that the original series characters can continue into the previous canon timeline and be surprised by the Space Seed episode? Personally, I see 3 possibilities. The first possibility is we are retconning a lot of the original series because maybe our goal is to go from Strange New Worlds into year 1 with Kirk as the captain of the Enterprise, Spock as first officer, and we are just going to take what we have now built in Strange New Worlds and say that the timeline has changed, that things are not as they were originally, and this is the new direction that we're going in. The second possibility I see happening is that La'an dies, and her death becomes such a significant weight on all the characters, but in this case specifically Spock, if this is an actual relationship between the two of them, that he then just cuts himself off emotionally. This is the last straw for him after Chapel and everything with Discovery, and that's how he becomes the Spock of the original series. Her death basically just causing him to just shut down and be Vulcan. The third possibility, and the one that I have been thinking ever since the beginning of the series, is that La'an gets involved in something that essentially erases her from the timeline or erases her from the memory of everyone on the Enterprise. And I really thought that this was going to happen after the episode Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, where we see her interacting with the temporal agency. Because my initial thought was, oh, they're going to come back and recruit her. Because it felt like more than just an Easter egg having them in that episode. It felt like a foreshadowing event, an opportunity for them to then use that as an excuse later in the season to remove La'an from the storyline and still keep the surprise of Khan showing up later without everybody having this back history with her. And spoilers for older Star Trek TV series, but Star Trek has not traditionally done really well with major character deaths. Nobody was happy with what happened to Jadzia. Nobody was happy with what happened to Lieutenant Yar. Trip in Enterprise. These major character deaths normally do not go over well, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they were written off the show for specific reasons, and the writers had to kind of fudge, make up a reason to get the characters off the show. But Star Trek fans, from my experience, we don't like it when that happens. And La'an has become a beloved character. People like her. She is a character that a lot of fans connect with. And nobody wants to see her die. But obviously, unless we are retconning the original series, which is possible, something is going to happen to her because she is not serving on the Enterprise that we are aware of in year one. And we already know that we're going to be dealing with the trauma of what happens to Pike at the end of the series. So it feels like it would be very heavy-handed to have these multiple traumatic aspects of major characters occurring around the same time. And even though they might not be timeline-wise around the same time, because the number of episodes are so few, 10 for season 3, 10 for season 4, and only 5 for season 5, it's going to feel like one after the other if we do that. It's an inherent conundrum, putting La'an in a relationship with Spock, because if it's a real relationship, it feels very quick. It feels like a rebound relationship. We know that it's not going to last. It really does a disservice, I think, to what they built up already with T'Pring, what they built up already with Chapel, what they built up between La'an and this other version of Kirk, especially knowing that main timeline Kirk is going to break up with Carol Marcus, and he is going to be free to date. And that would have been an interesting scene to have between La'an and Kirk. But on the flip side, if it's fake, if for some reason this is not La'an, I don't know, if something happened during the Gorn scene that we missed and she was replaced by something or whatever, things happen in Star Trek, then we've just re-traumatized two characters who have recently gotten out of a romantic relationship with a romantic relationship, and that just doesn't really sit well with me storytelling-wise. I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens. I'm curious to see how they play this off. I don't want to be disappointed. I'm already kind of disappointed, but I do think that the writers of the show are very good, and I think that they're very aware, and so I feel like there is something planned that we just don't see. I just hope that it's fulfilling, both as a viewer, but also for the characters moving forward. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see.